Today we're talking with Katie Baird, who's an executive coach focused on career transitions and helping leaders develop in their career. And our topic today is really how to operate at the executive level of your career. As we think about operating at the executive level, a large part of that is building relationships and building your network. And so I'm curious, how do you see the difference between building your network, building relationships, maybe early in your career to mid career to when you're maybe later in this executive level of your career?
I think my perspective as a coach is actually pretty consistent no matter where someone's at in their career. And that's really to be playing the long game in terms of relationship building and maintenance, and just always being, I think, genuinely curious. But where I see the difference is almost not only topically what people bring to coaching around the subject of networking, but also the role they want the coach to play in supporting them on those topics. So more senior leaders that I work with tend to think about this subject in terms of questions like, how do I grow my influence with the board? Or what do I want my legacy to be? Or how do I leverage my holistic network in being an additional sounding board around business strategy X that I'm grappling with? Some pretty substantive topics where they really want to leverage relationships. Whereas more junior people I see come to coaching and they actually want more of a tactical how-to guide. They're looking for very practical advice, steps around the act of networking and communicating and engaging with people they either don't yet have relationships with or they do in a very limited capacity.
I love hitting on the difference of that people be looking for, not only topically, kind of like the support that they're looking for. And one of the things I think about there on the support front is that there can sometimes be this perception that as you climb the ranks in your career, as you reach higher levels, you're maybe in an executive level position, that things might just come easily to you, or that you don't have fears or concerns of putting yourself out there or meeting new people, having a conversation around an area of expertise. And I just don't always see that to be the case. There is a level of comfortability that happens over time, but I'm curious, what are some of the concerns or fears that pop up for established senior level executives that you work with?
So many people do rest on their laurels of the skills and capabilities or expertise they've built over time. And then they'll quickly realize, oh, this is different. I think one of the biggest fears people have around that is they actually don't know from an operating standpoint what needs to be different. They can speak in generalities about needing to be more effective or level up, but they have not protected the time to think through and challenge themselves on what does this mean for me from like tactical approaches? What does this mean in terms of a change in my behavior? What skills does this context demand of me? They truly haven't thought about that. And that's, I think, a great topic to dig in on in coaching and where I work with a lot of people on.
Yeah, I love that you use that phrase, carving out the time, because that is something you and I have talked about. And we see a lot that as you become busier in your career, the decisions that you're making are more high stakes. There's just more demands on your time professionally, personally. Often there just really isn't the time to sit down and do this reflection. And people who do work with a coach say, if I wasn't carving out the time and coaching to do this work, I wouldn't have done it. How do you see that show up with the clients that you're working with?
It's so true. It's probably one of the first things to fall off somebody's plate as a senior leader. And I think there's 3 reasons for why an investment in your own career development, in your own space to reflect and grow, falls off. The first is what I mentioned around people feeling comfortable with how they've operated to date. They feel like they've got all the tools already. Personal development will be pushed to the wayside. The second is culturally, especially in the States here, our continued emphasis on like always being on and hyper responsive. It just drains the ever living daylights out of everyone's time. It just, coaching can't fit in. And then the third reason, especially in the context of a transition, is there's just this automatic jump to I need to deliver, I need to execute. And as a result of that, when coaching falls off their radar, people are, I think, far more either lackadaisical or frantic or reactive about their own career development. They're nowhere as near as intentional as they could be. And then from an overall transition standpoint, these entire phases around acclimating and learning and vision setting are completely shortchanged in service of just executing for the sake of proving that you can do something.
It's just so easy I can speak from personal experience. Of course, it's so easy to push it off, especially when we know that people hate doing self-reflection or just taking the time to reflect on how to execute or operate more effectively. Do you notice with the people who do come to you for coaching, the people who do invest, that there's something going on there in terms of recognition of why they're investing, why they know it will be to their benefit or to their organization's benefit, to make sure that they carve out and protect the time?
Absolutely. I think it's a little bit of seeing is believing. So once people get going with coaching, especially if they're a senior leader who hasn't worked with the coach before, the proof usually for them comes in just how much more efficient they are with their time, protecting that hour or two once or twice a month to have somebody as a sounding board to either accelerate their thinking about something, experiment with different options, war game something out, is profoundly helpful in terms of their ability to make business decisions and, feel like they're being successful and effective in the role. I think great leaders are ones who can generate multiple options and then they can pivot really quickly in terms of what the business situation demands of them. And when they've protected time for coaching, to be thoughtful about how they show up as a leader, what their own priorities are, which blends the personal and the professional and what the business demands, they're just that much more, I think, efficient and effective with their time.
One of the other things that I see falling off beyond carving out the time to do this work is really spending time to think on what's my personal vision for my career, what does my personal brand look like, how am I building my personal and professional network. Why do you think that portion falls off a lot for people?
I think it's a shame that so many leaders, even people who would say, I've been really successful in my career, I've achieved so much, I feel that I have made an impact, they still have this firm line separating personal and professional priorities or goals. I don't think they can be mutually exclusive. And I don't think I can be a truly valuable coach or resource for an executive if they are not thinking holistically and bringing the personal and professional together, especially when they're thinking about topics like vision and brand. If they don't, I think those are the people who eventually realize that something will always feel like it's missing and just out of reach or disappointing. And I do think it's in large part because they have not allowed themselves to marry the personal and the professional when they think about their development, their ambitions, how they want to be known and seen in the business world.
Yeah. And that term personal brand is just, it's a funny one. It's ambiguous, and the way to go about approaching it is definitely unclear. I know you and I talk about this a lot. There's lots of different philosophies and ways to think about personal brand. How do you think about personal brand with clients? How do you help them develop the different aspects of what their personal brand is?
One of the many like consulting jargon phrases that have caught fire out there that can be approached in so many different ways. For me, to really oversimplify the framework, I use this sort of Venn diagram. And what I'm pushing clients to get clear about is this intersection between passions and strengths. It should, again, bring the personal and the professional to light. And I think it's critically important for clients to get to a point where they are clear, they're comfortable articulating and communicating to people what their unique value is, so that other people want to connect with them more, they know how to best utilize them, and they want to work together. Your goal as an executive is to, I think, simplify the narrative for people, to control the messaging, and to make it very easy for others to understand what they can get out of the relationship. So I do think brand and vision are two of those really foundational, fundamental topics any professional needs to be thinking through. And I would say for folks, in terms of a tool around brand, there's 1.5 million options out there. Find whatever activity or prompt works for you, but make sure that somebody could leave a conversation knowing about the unique value you provide and really the true substance around who you are.
Yeah, easier said than done for sure.
Yeah, usually something we unpack over several conversations in coaching. It is not a one and done Mad Libs fill in the blank activity by any stretch.
Yeah, I definitely wish it was. It could be a good starting point, but and a word that you mentioned in there, I think that a lot of people struggle with is the word passion. Many people hate that word. Why do you choose that particular word or think about it in that way when you're approaching a personal brand?
The reason I use passion is I think there is this very kind of visceral, tangible element to that concept. It is when someone is clear on what they're passionate about, it is evident and it's something they can get excited about. It is almost infectious and it's very hard to fake that. And I think it is incredibly important to be authentic in terms of how you are framing who you are and what excites you, not only to make networking and connecting less clunky, but to ensure that you're ultimately framing yourself, your story, your ambitions in a way that you're excited to get up and go to work and do that stuff every day. If you aren't genuinely thrilled and thirsty for the vision you've set for yourself, if you are not enthusiastic about your brand, that is going to be incredibly evident. And it's going to be really difficult to have any long-standing momentum around pursuing your goals.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And I use that word infectious a lot as well. I think about when you have that level of clarity and authenticity about who you are and what you care about and how you want to show up in the world and the value that you're bringing to the table, it's notable. People see it, they want it, they gravitate towards it. And it's so interesting to me that you can feel that yourself personally. You can also want to replicate that for yourself. But then there's this barrier to make the jump into I'm going to take the time to pause and reflect and find that for myself.
It's hard work, and I think a lot of us have become so comfortable speaking in really vague, obscure business language that we realize our initial way of explaining anything about our vision, even our impact so far, or the brand we aspire to, is very generic. And that's a tough pill to swallow. And it is rigorous work with a lot of reflection, hopefully input from others, a lot of iterative thinking to get to an answer that is not cookie cutter, and that is something that you're confident to get out there and project to the world.
Iterative for sure. Yeah. And setting that expectation, I think, is really important because that there can be this feeling that I'm just going to sit down, I'm going to put the pen to paper, and I'm going to come up with the answer right away, and it's going to be the right one. It's like, I haven't seen it work like that really ever.
I agree. I don't think there's a coach out there that could deliver on that. And if they did, I would wager that the coach is really driving the process as opposed to the client being the one that is exploring, unpacking, contemplating brand from different angles.
Tell me a little bit about the difference of your work when you're working one on one or when you're working with a team of leaders.
I think substantively, the topics that are addressed, whether a client comes to me one-on-one or I am working with a leadership team, both collectively and individually, the subject matter is oftentimes the same when we're thinking about transitions or leadership development. That being said, when I work with leadership teams, it's interesting because I'm almost affecting and supporting development from a variety of different angles simultaneously. So it's like the system is growing and evolving, as are the leaders as individuals. I think coaching engagements like that are also really valuable for the entire business because these topics of development and leadership are at the forefront of almost every conversation. And those at the more junior or middling levels are seeing how much time is protected for that. I think it sends a really great message. I think it is something that can then trickle down to the other ranks. And most often it happens in the context of we are about to embark on a new strategy, or our business is pivoting, and what is that going to demand of the leadership team? And you end up with a group that is steering the ship that is that much more purposeful. So you have, I think, greater confidence and collaboration, connectivity, all of those things happening in these systems because of the time they've put into coaching as they're also embarking on a new or different strategy.
We've touched on a bunch of different topics today. I'm curious if you could give me an example of one person you've worked with in the last year that really stands out as a fun and exciting and engaging client to work with.
There's a woman I've actually been working with fairly consistently for almost 3 years now. And what's been exciting in the past 6 months or so is that our work has actually focused on saying no and changing direction. So this leader, when I first started working with her, she came to me through a referral from another coach who thought we'd be a good fit based on her profile and where she was at. She had a very clear vision. She had a very clear definition of success. She'd arguably worked her entire career for this one goal. She was angling for a really senior appointment. when we started working together, and she wanted to position herself to secure that. And the role she was angling for, she would probably be in for about 2 years. She did get that role, this thing that she's built up her whole career to. Not thrilled, not satisfied. It's not what she thought it would be. And she's been able in the past 6 months to articulate why that is. And as a result, she's surprised a lot of folks by choosing to step down in the next few months. And our work now is focused more on, I would say, pivoting her career in a direction that absolutely builds on the brand she has and her expertise in the industry. But she's channeling that more into advocacy work moving forward. So I think what's exciting about that, and hopefully a reminder to your audience or anybody that hears this, is that the idea of being successful and effective can also mean that you're saying no, that you're doing less, that you are taking your career in a different direction. To be intentional or to benefit from working with an executive coach, you don't need to only have goals that mean you're going up, up, and up these rungs of a ladder. And so I think that's just hopefully a great reminder for people. And that's been really rewarding for me to help her think about new boundaries and frame her story in a new direction to try something new.
Yeah, I really appreciate that example, because I would imagine that's a very hard spot to be in, that you have spent 2 years angling for one particular thing and then it doesn't turn out the way that you want. And so there's a lot that goes into being able to let go of that situation.
Many months of work, many conversations to even just ascertain, is this right for me in terms of the role? Am I making the right decision? And then what's my new vision? What's next? So a hard conclusion to come to, and again, one that doesn't really happen overnight.
Thank you so much for this conversation. I'm sure there's much more that we could talk about, but I appreciate covering the ground we did today.
Thanks, Jenny.